Hi, everybody. I'm David Wilts. Thank you. I was worried that the projector would hit my eyes. So I'm going to stand maybe here. But I really appreciate Mark and everyone else's words. I'm going to be as brief as possible. What I'm going to talk about is why isn't this happening? The first question I have is, and please raise your hand, don't just not do this, but who's in architecture or engineering or consulting in the room? Okay, pretty much everybody. Who has done an all-electric building? Okay, so we need to get to net zero. Does anyone remember the 2030 challenge? Okay, we have some nods, we have some smiles. Most every firm in this city signed up for the 2030 challenge around 2008, 2009. And by 2023, we were basically just going to coast to the finish line with all the buildings being net zero. That obviously is not the case. And the question is, why isn't that the case? I've done a ton of smart buildings. I have a ton of brain damage and PTSD from trying to do this stuff. And I've worked all over the world, and I stopped doing it because it was too hard and the industry wasn't ready. And I wanted to figure out, okay, why isn't this happening? And so for a few minutes, I'm going to talk about that. The first is that there's the world of the asset holders. These are the asset owners that own all the buildings you're looking at around you. These are the pension funds, these are the sovereign wealth funds, these are the endowments funds, and they're managed by funds like JP Morgan Chase and Brookfield and on and on and on. They own the buildings. They don't care about the buildings. And I'm just going to be as blunt as possible here. They don't care. They only care about net operating income, return on investment, and their hold time. And the people that are mostly in this room care about the physical asset itself. And this is the design of it, this is the engineering of it, this is the operation of it, this is the engineering and facility management of it. And these two worlds are not connected, and the incentives for each one are opposing. So just to give some quick examples, working on Morgan Stanley's headquarters in Westchester, they bought this beautiful, it was Texaco's headquarters building in Westchester, New York. I was on the team. The construction manager got paid a bonus for being on or under budget. So you have a $450,000 air handling unit that's 95% efficient, or a $300,000 air handling unit that's 65% efficient. What's their motivation and which one will they pick? They'll pick the cheaper one. How does that result in higher net operating income? Most decisions around existing buildings and the investment in them from a capital perspective are all around net operating income and return on investment to meet the investment thesis that the fund has for the asset. And then there's a ton of resistance right now about the forthcoming SEC disclosure requirements. People are trying to ignore it, put it away, but the bottom line is that if this is not addressed, the buildings will become stranded assets. Stranded assets is a term that has more to do with insurance. If you can't get insurance on your building, then it becomes a stranded asset because you can't get replacement value. So fossil fuel consuming buildings will eventually become stranded assets because publicly traded companies that have to report to the SEC won't move in. And investors, sovereign wealth funds, endowments that have to report to the SEC won't purchase the asset because they don't want the dirty asset on their books. This is already happening in London. If a building doesn't have an ESG plan and a good reporting methodology, they can't lease out the space, and they also can't sell the asset, and the value drops dramatically. So this is already happening elsewhere. It's not yet happening here. So what's the solution? We need to invest in long-term building performance, which will increase the asset value over time. We need to support more assets with fewer staff, which means lower net operating income. So it ticks the box for the environment and those goals for carbon, but it also ticks the box for lower operating expenses and higher net operating income. And if you can't see, this means a higher return on investment. So, where are we? Okay, so there we go. Now, okay, there is no data standardization in our industry. It's pathetic. And it's not, I mean, I know there's IFC, and that's kind of okay. But when you look at the asset management world, there's no standard file type. There's maybe this thing called Argus, but there's no standardized pro forma, and there's no data portability. There's very little data portability in the design side of the world, let alone design and construction. So I don't trust your Excel model. I'll take your numbers from a PDF and hand enter them into my Excel model, and I'll trust that. And then I don't trust your BIM model. I'm the GC. I'm going to make my own BIM model. Stupid. Fingers crossed, your due diligence docs. So think about disposition acquisition, buying an asset. The lack of the standardized data, the buyers don't trust the documents they're being given even. All of this is because there's no standardized data in the industry. So what's the solution here? Standardized asset financial profiles by industry. So multifamily, retail, industrial, office, whatever. And then also leveraging BIM and ISO 19650. ISO 19650 is so cool, and I'm happy to talk to anybody about exchange information requirements, operational information requirements, project information requirements, and asset information requirements. This is going to be the key to unlocking things to help bring and converge together the asset management world and the physical asset management world. And so what we want is data portability between applications. Mark, you were very kind to Autodesk and Bentley. I'm not a fan. I am not a fan at all, or Esri. And this is because there's a lack of data portability. And people want to keep you in their castles, within their walls of data. This needs to change. Okay, so how does it change? I lead ULI's data forum. I'm now hanging out with the asset managers all the time and the fund managers. We need to understand data in a more organized way. This is a draft data framework based around the BIM numbers that people are somewhat used to with 3D, 4D, and 5D. But this really takes into account the GIS data and the contextual data from where the project is, and goes all the way to 7D with insight and business intelligence, because you now have the data to compare things to one another. And again, I'm happy to talk to anybody about all of this. There isn't time to go through all of this now. So what needs to happen? I tried to animate this in PowerPoint last night at like 11 p.m. and it didn't work, but I was able to do that. So blue and, you know, I was thinking, okay, go Ukraine. So we have yellow and blue here. But then when you mix it together, it's green, and it's green for sustainability and green for making more money for the fund managers. So that I was able to animate successfully. But then, let's see if this works. This is what we need to get to for data standardization. We have master data at the top, gross floor area ratio. You guys can read for yourselves. But then we have the standardized financial data, and then we have standardized building performance data. If we can get there and get that portability happening within the industry, we can really have some transformation. So thank you all very much.